And go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm Nick, and I'll be doing a presentation today just about my sales frameworks. This is how I run my meetings and charge premium rates and work with clients who listen to what I'm saying a lot more than the clients who don't. So let me see if I can figure out the screen sharing. Hopefully this works. Let's try it. So present this tab. Let's see. Hey, here we go. All right. Allow. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see my screen. Can someone give me like a thumbs up? Sweet. Okay, so Sell by Helping. So this is Sell by Helping, website consultants framework for getting new clients. So I take a very consultative approach to selling. I don't see it as sales, and I'll explain a bit more about that. So today, what I'm going to cover is why you need a framework when you're selling, and how that allows you to control the conversation. The mindset that I take when I go into sales meetings that I think will help you get a lot better at it. The phases that I go through during an actual meeting, which is why the meetings actually work. And at the end, I'll bring it all together and just run through kind of the key points with all of this. So hopefully everyone's okay with that. So that's me, but to be honest, that doesn't matter right now. I really hate when people go on about themselves and spend like 5 minutes on that. You'll see within the content. All right, so if you don't have a system to sell, you'll be at the mercy of your prospect's system to buy. So someone smart said that once, I don't remember who. And what this means is if you're not going into your sales meetings with an idea of how you're going to run it, you're just going to be listening to whatever they want. You're just going to do what they say. And the way that people buy, if you think about how you buy, it's not that great when you want to charge more, because what they're doing is like, do you do this? How much do you charge? And then they're going to go and compare with the next person. Do you do this? How much do you charge? And then they're just going to go for the person who's cheapest. So the reason why you need a framework is, firstly, without one, you have no control. The prospects are just going to ask whatever questions they have. They're going to compare, and usually they choose the cheapest option. And so that means that you can't differentiate very well. You're going to be stuck just charging whatever the market happens to be, and they're going to treat you just like everyone else. You're an extra pair of hands instead of being an expert or anything like that. And ultimately, that means you can't charge your premium rates. Your clients don't really respect your expertise. That sucks. You end up working with the worst clients that way, and you don't really enjoy your work as much. So the way the framework changes things is positions you as more of a consultant. So you're the expert rather than the person who's just, hey, go do this for me. You get to work on actual real problems and offer real solutions. So you're changing the game for people, which leads to value recognition. They understand that your work is worth something. And because of that, then you get to charge higher rates because they can see that this is something that they value. And of course, you get to work with clients who respect you and they value what you're doing. And that makes things way more fun. So probably I should give a bit of a story. I used to be an accountant a long time ago, and my first job after accounting was doing sales for an accounting firm. And I really struggled to start with because I was going in trying to think about it like I need to convince people to buy the stuff. And so that means you're trying to convince people, like that's not a natural thing for us to do. You feel like you're trying to manipulate people. You're trying to trick them almost into buying your stuff, and you're desperately trying to get them to agree. Where things changed for me is when I stopped trying to sell and started just using my expertise. So I was selling accounting to clients, and I was an accountant and I was pretty good. So I could solve their problems using my expertise. So instead of being the, hey, what do you want? Or do you want this? Be the person who's like, well, what you need is this. Try to solve the problems. So I don't like in my case, I don't do websites. I solve business problems. So the actual framework itself goes through 3 core phases. And this is something that I've built up over like 15 plus years, multiple industries. I've done accounting, sold, anything to do with accounting, business consulting, business coaching, websites, marketing services. This process works anytime you're selling any sort of expertise or any sort of knowledge thing, anytime you want to differentiate yourself against other service providers. And so during your meeting, you're going to go through 3 broad phases. So at the start, what you're trying to do is you're trying to understand. You understand the client, the problem they're facing, what they're trying to achieve. Then after you really get it, then you can actually use that understanding and educate them a little bit. So you can let them know the reality, what the real problem actually is. You can talk about what the industry is like and why their previous solutions didn't work and what other people get wrong. And then you can make a recommendation for how to move forward with a solution. And then finally, you get to close the meeting. And that always sounds really scary because people think of like selling and closing deals. It's really just closing the meeting. So you talk about the logistics of a solution, how much you charge, what any objections they might have, or any questions to answer their questions, and then you give them the next steps. And if you go through that right, you end up with a client at the end of it, which is awesome. So phase 1, the understanding phase. So the first part of this is understanding their current situation. So that's their business, how they got there, what they do, how it all works, how do they get clients. Then you can start talking about the actual problem that they have. So they don't know what their problem is. They just know that things are going wrong. So they're going to tell you what's going wrong usually. And then you can find out more about it. You can find out the impact it's having on them. So how much dollar value impact is there with the issue they're facing? And then you can talk about their goals and what they're trying to achieve. Like they came to you for a reason. They're talking to you because they want something. What is it that they want? How much is that actually worth? So that's the understanding phase broadly. So at the start, you need to take control of the meeting. This is really, really, really important because what happens is people will come to you saying, okay, cool. How does it work? How much do you charge? And they have all these questions. And if you just answer the questions, then they've had to control the entire meeting and you're not running through your process. So when people come in and start asking meetings, the best thing you can do is flip the script and ask the questions. Because if you ask the questions, then you're in control. And if you're in control, you get to guide them through the journey that is beneficial to you instead of beneficial to, well, no one really, because they're not going to get a good solution if they're just asking the questions that they care about. So one of the things that I do is I'll say, well, in order to see what we can do, or in order to figure out the price, or in order to whatever it is that they're asking for, I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? And then they're going to just give you the permission to go through your process. The reason why this works is because you are the expert at what you're doing. It's your business. You've been doing this, or yours, whatever it is that you're doing. You're the expert at it, not them. They just want to buy it. So most people would happily agree to go through the process because they don't know how this needs to work. They have rarely done it more than once or twice. And people who don't want to do that, they just want to know the price. Well, they're price shoppers. They're the people who are looking for the commodity, and you don't want to be the commodity. So if someone is just after price, it's very tempting to say, okay, cool, here it is, and still try to land them anyway. I tend to push them away because I don't want to work with those people. They don't make my life interesting. If you are desperate for work, you end up having to work with people like that, and it kind of sucks. So yeah, I don't like it, so I will refuse to play that game. It's up to you if you want to do that, but if you want to win, stick to your process. So the first part of all this is understanding their business. And this is really important. They're coming to you typically because they have, it might not be a business specifically. It might be, you might be providing a service for their personal life. I think for a lot of people on here, they're doing development work. So this will be, typically there's some sort of business association with it. So I'll ask things about their business, how long they've been doing it, how it works, how they started. I'll, ask about their clients. So who they work with, what they actually do, where the clients come from, like how they pick up clients. Things that make them special and unique, why the clients use them. And the objective with doing all this is to get them to open up and feel comfortable, because people who run businesses, it's a passion area usually, and they don't really get that many opportunities to talk about it because they have friends and they have family, but the friends and family don't get it. So by letting them open up and talk, it makes them very comfortable while you get the information you need. And so they're opening up and they're talking, and they're getting used to talking to you. And then that flows through the rest of the meeting. Okay, so then we start digging into the problem. And the idea is that we need to figure out the real issue that they're having. And so you can start with questions like, so what made you reach out if they happen to reach out? Or, what made you decide that you need this? If they're building an app. So why is it that you're building this app? Like, why do you want this app? And then everything they answer, you need to dig a little bit deeper. So I do the and then what? So and then what? And what does that do? And then I just ask questions that invite them to talk more. And I didn't write this down, but one of the secrets is when you ask a question is not to talk after, even if it gets a bit awkward, because sometimes people need a bit of time to think and process. And if it gets uncomfortable, they feel more inclined to fill the silence, that fill the gap with noise, with words. That also goes in reverse though. When it's silent, you feel the need to fill the gap. So fight that feeling and just let them talk. So let them think and process and talk. And so what happens is you get to the real issue. You want to figure out what the real issue is, because it's very rarely that, someone's like, in my case, it's like, well, business is quiet and I'm not getting enough leads. I mean, that's a symptom of a problem. That's not the problem. The problem is that their website might not be appropriate for, their marketing channels, or maybe that they're just not marketing at all. And so then when you find out what the problem is, you can find the impact. So in my case, it's like, well, okay, how many leads do you feel like you should be getting? What is your conversion rate? How much money do you make off getting new clients? And that lets me figure out, is this even worth fixing? So the one thing that I think a lot of people get wrong is they forget that no one actually wants what you're doing. They don't want your service. They want what the service will give them. They want the outcome. So when I talk to people, I start trying to figure out what the upside is. And so, what is the impact of my service realistically? So let's say it's 20 extra clients, and then I find out what the clients are actually worth on average. And they say, well, they might be worth 5K a piece, which means the upside of my service might be 100K extra revenue. And so when we start making this stuff clear, both them as the client and me as the provider will start to see what this actually is worth. And that forms the basis of what we call value pricing. And so that means your price changes based off what this is worth. I don't do that. I keep my price fairly fixed, but I need to know, is it worth me going through the process and giving them a price? Because if it's going to be worth 20K, then, probably not worth it. But if it's going to be 100 or 200 or 300, or in some cases, multi-million dollars in upside, then yes, it's very worth working together. And then before you move on to start talking about going into the education phase, recap. So before I move on, I just want to make sure I understood everything. And then you just summarize everything, like, their business. So, I understand you do this kind of business and here's the situation you're in. This is what's happening. And this is kind of what the impact looks like it is. And what you're looking to achieve is blah, blah, blah. And, we're saying roughly, we think that could probably be worth about this much money. Does that sound right? Have I missed anything? This is very important because it's so easy to actually miss something. And you end up going through an entire sales call with like having completely missed the point. And then because you're missing the point, if they're being polite, they're not telling you you're missing the point. They're just like sitting there waiting for it to be over. And then at the end, you don't have a new client. You have someone who's relieved to get off the call. If you notice as well, at this stage, we haven't really spoken about ourselves. It's 100% about the client. The only talking we're doing is to ask them questions to figure them out. Just keep that in mind. All right, so phase 2 is education. And we're going through 3 parts here. Firstly, we need to educate them about the real problem. So this is what's actually wrong, and it might not be what they think. Running through some myth busting, and this is where we can kind of differentiate a little bit as well. So you talk about how other people would rip them off or have ripped them off, why previous solutions failed, what goes wrong in the industry, And this is where it's like, well, we're obviously not doing that. And then you need to run through, at the end of it, is educate them about what they actually need. So what solution would fix the problems that they have? What solution will give them the outcomes that they want? So am I, is this, so far, is everything okay? Like, am I going at a reasonable pace? Is it too quick for anyone? No, I see a thumbs up. Cool. Okay, I'm just going to keep going then. If you guys have questions, I can't see chat. So just feel free to pop it into the chat and I'll see it at the end, and then we can do the Q&A.
I don't know if anyone else has questions that they're contributing, but there's, I think we're saving them for the Q&A section later.
Sweet. Yeah. They're more than welcome to pop it in the chat, so then we can look at it in the Q&A, because I know sometimes you think about it and then later on you'll forget. So cool, I'm going to keep going. All right. So when you reveal the real problem, what happens is people are seeing symptoms. So they might think that, in my case, my website's embarrassing. But the reality is that it's just the wrong site for the target audience. And because of that, that's what makes it seem more embarrassing. Or it doesn't generate leads, which means it's the wrong type of site for the marketing that they need to do. Or maybe they're not doing marketing at all. So what happens is when you start revealing the real problem, people start getting these little light bulbs going off. And those light bulbs, for me, they're almost like a currency, like a sales currency, because the more light bulbs that are going off for them, the more they see me as the expert and the more they want to actually work with me. So like, I remember once I did a business card and so stupid. I put on the bottom, like, Wizard of Light Bulb Moments. So dumb. But that was the way I saw it, is like, my job was to make these light bulbs go off, because if the light bulbs go off, then they're going to work with me and then I get new clients and then that's a win. Now, sometimes the solution they need doesn't involve your service at all, and that's okay. I will try to help people all the time. So you'll see that the problem is like nothing to do with me. And it's like, well, your problem is like marketing. Now, that's not where I am, but I can introduce you to people. All right. So this, and main reason I'm making this point is there's been times when I've basically said, no, I'm not the right fit, or I'm not the right person, or you don't need what I need. That has led to more work. So these people have referred me to other people, or they've had another business that was much bigger, and they're like, well, okay, this is great. You're so like, great to talk to, and you've helped me so much. I'm involved with, and this has led to a couple of national organizations, which was just amazing, just for being a nice person. So karma's good. All right, so myth busting. This is something that lets you stand out a lot. So, these are things that I've said I had recently. So there was a client who their audience was primarily women, but the person running it was a guy. They had a guy doing the website, and it went for a very masculine vibe because that's what they liked. But that style wasn't really resonating with the women that wanted to go on it. So they were spending less time on the site. They were taking less action. And so it's like, well, if you had an appropriate styling for the audience, would have got more inquiries. And so doing this with pretty much everything. So you're shining a light on the industry as a whole. You're shining a light on what other people will do. And if you show them this, it shows that you know enough to not do that. And so you educate them on why these things matter, but just don't overwhelm them. You give them enough so they go, wow, okay, yeah, oh my God, I didn't realize that. And I get that happening a lot when I talk to people. At this point specifically, they're like, holy crap, like, okay. And it makes them not want to go out to the market and talk to people. Or when they do, the first time I tell people the common ways that, other web designers work, when they experience it, they're like, yep, this is what I was warned about. And they know enough not to go down that path. And obviously, when I do that, it's weighted to me because my processes are quite strong and in depth. So it helps me stand out a lot. And then finally, we're going through the actual solution that they need. So this is just the opposite of why it didn't work the last time they tried to get a solution. So in my case, it's like, well, look, what you need is not just like a website. You need a website with something specific, either it's features, style, functionality, or whatever, or it might be something completely different. And show how it solves the problem, because the problem is worth money. A website is not. Problem's worth money, website's not. And then your differentiation is that for most people, they can't do this education, and that helps you stand out. And most people don't actually bother with it. They just, here's how it works. Here's my pitch. Do you want to do it? And like, okay, how much is it? So this lets you stand out and kind of be the step above. And because you're not offering a service just like everyone else anymore, you get to charge premium rates because people see that there's value in it. And people will always pay for what they value. Okay, now the final phase of this process is closing. And it's not the always be closing thing, it's just the end of the meeting. And this is where you guys decide whether you're going to work together or not. So similar to the rest, there's 3 phases. There's the logistics of the solution, which is where you go through your process, how it works, timeframes, like how much money they need to put in for you to do it. You need to handle any objections, which is concerns or excuses not to work together. And then you need to give them some easy next steps so it's easy for them to move forward and work with you. And I've seen deals die there, which is terrible. So logistics and investment. And this is part of your time to shine. So you get to run through your process and run through like the phases and how you work and your team and timelines, all the stuff that makes you better than the average. And finding out what that is really important. And so I tend to work with people who are kind of trying to leverage expertise a lot. And so they have some. When you're first starting out, this is a little bit harder, but you can always find what is the benefits of you and your experiences. And then you just need to position it in the right way. And so when I do this, it shows that what I'm doing is more than what other people do. And I have a specific process, and that process is why I can deliver the results. And that then justifies when you go through price. So when I tell people price, this also, by the way, always tell them the price when you're going through this, because I see a lot of people doing, giving their pricing away in the proposal that they send after the fact. And that has a major problem in that if they have an issue with the price, you're not going to know. They're just going to disappear. So that's when ghosting happens, because they get sticker shock. So what I'll do is I'll say, well, okay, so now in order to deliver this service that I just ran through, that, we've both agreed that the kind of results we've spoken about can be achieved, we'll be looking at an investment of around, whatever it might be, 10,000, 20,000, whatever. How does that work for you? And then you have to wait for them to answer. And sometimes what happens is people will object. And object doesn't mean like, in court, like, hey, I object. It's they have an excuse, or, some sort of problem. That's like, it's more than I expected, or the last person charged less. With this, I've done content around this before, and the biggest issue with pricing is that people have a perceived value of something. And that perceived value is based off usually previous experiences. Like if someone went and got a website for $1,000, that's their experience. Then when they go to the next person, they're going to have 1,000 in their head because that was the previous. And maybe if it's better, they might think it might be worth 2,000 at most. But if you're going to be 10,000, they're going to be shocked, or even 5,000. They're going to be shocked because it's such a big jump. And so it's based off their previous experience. So I don't lower my prices ever. I ask a lot of questions because I want to find out how they got to that perceived value. So it's like, that's more than I expected. What did you expect? And they'll say, oh, I was expecting 2,000. So why were you expecting 2,000? Oh, my last person was 1,500. And so I thought, 2,000 is like a reasonable jump on that. Cool. Then you get to use logic and say, well, so your previous solution was 1,500 and your previous solution got you here. It's not working. It's not taking you to that level that you're trying to achieve. We ran through the process. What's needed to get those results? That's my process, and that gets the results. That's why we charge what we charge. Is it reasonable to expect that the solution that works costs you more than the solution that doesn't work? And typically they're going to say, well, actually, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And all you need to do is just handle objections. So you ask, is there any issues with what we discussed? Is there anything that will prevent you from moving forward? You just ask a lot of questions to find out any problems that they have And then you have to address those problems then and there because they're with you. If they go home and they think about it, you're probably not going to get it because people get scared and they bail. In this case, usually if you've done things right, the emotional part of their brain has already bought in. They already want it, but they just have a logical part that's a bit scared and doesn't want to spend money. So you need to satisfy the logical part. And that means you've got to handle all these problems that they have and explain why they're not problems. And if you do that right, you just need to make the next step. Make the next steps easy. I've seen so many people fail at this last step. Like they've got the sale pretty much, and then they make the next steps so challenging. Like for me, I'll just do a short proposal. I'll tell them, like, I'm going to do a short proposal. I'll send it to you. You get it by the end of the week. It's just going to outline what we discussed. Quickly read through it. If it makes sense, you sign electronically. You don't have to go print and scan and and take a photo of it or whatever the hell. Print, sign electronically. There'll be a deposit invoice. You pay the deposit, and then we can get started. You just make it sound very, very easy. And that is to remove friction because deals die when they get too hard. It gives them clarity so they know what to expect and when. And it reduces doubts because they see you know what you're doing. It's very easy and obviously it's slick and polished, which makes you better than someone who is not. So now when they leave the meeting, they're feeling confident in you and there's less chance of ghosting because you've addressed their concerns. You've talked about price. They know there's nothing in there that's going to be a shock. If there is something that will be a shock in your proposal, by the way, mention it early, mention it in this meeting so they know, explain why. So that way they aren't shocked because if they're shocked, they're going to be like, maybe not. All right, so the complete framework is you go through 3 phases. You understand their situation, the problems that they have, goals that they have. You educate them about the real problem, why things fail and why things don't work and what the solution actually is. And then you close out the meeting by running through logistics and pricing, handling objections, and giving them easy next steps. And if you do this, you don't have to sell. You don't have to do anything sleazy. Just listen, educate, and help. It makes a huge difference. It's something that I've been doing most of my career. It's something that I've taught. I did a sales course, created a sales course and had 300 plus people go through it. Very, very good feedback on it. I used to train sales teams in my business before this one. I did business consulting and coaching, and sales training was a big part of it. This really does work. If you do this right, you will be the expert in the room, and you'll stand out a lot more than everyone else who's sitting there just taking orders. So they're the people complaining later about how they can't charge more. Meanwhile, you're charging fairly high rates and getting good clients and enjoying life. So definitely helps. All right, now me, now that I've finished actually talking. So that's me. You can ask me anything. I have my agency at creativeclick.com.au. I'm on LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn every day. And I have a course if you're interested. You don't have to buy it or anything. Just thought I may as well put it in there just in case. I'll be redoing the course this year with better cameras and stuff. Thank you. So let's stop sharing.
Thanks, Nick. Very interesting topic. There were some people talking on chat. Edward, do you want to approach your question you had, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a conversation topic of yes, there's a process where nonprofits do need to be able to make money to be able to talk about continuity. But when you have your primary offering, I'm the job hackers, we can talk about Chingu, whatever it is that we are talking about, when you are providing something to a group of people for free, how do you, so to speak, increase your rate? Or how do you sell people on something? How do you adapt your process when it's not a matter of getting people into a meeting room, but being able to get people to engage and continue to take part in something, or even to think that it's worth it in the first place when the price tag is free?
Okay, so I guess the first question is this worth it? It's free. Is it worth anything, or is it actually just
It's a
Worth
6
nothing.
week free. It's a 6 week long course with 2 classes every week, and we have people that get 6-figure roles out of it.
Cool. Okay. So with everything, right? One of the key parts of selling is people, if they value it, if there's value to them, they want it. And so with something like that, it's like, well, people are getting 6-figure roles by taking this course.
Well, more so, they're getting a larger sense of community and a shift in their overall mindset about how they're approaching work.
The question is, do they value that? So you're always tying back to what people value. Like there's things that we value as service providers that we think makes us awesome, but what is it that the people think is awesome? And you just want to make that really clear to them. And I usually go the route of questioning people, because I'm talking about like this specific presentation was like me having meetings with people, less so about like my marketing copy. But my marketing copy does typically take the same form. It's, here's a problem that you have, that I think you have. Here's an outcome that you want. Here's how you achieve this outcome with my thing. And if you do that right, if there's value to it, then even adding a price tag will get people to do it. Sometimes adding the price tag will make more people want to do it. And more serious people want to do it, because in my view, when something's free, it's typically not worth it.
So where does that outlook come from for you?
Experience.
Okay.
Yeah, because like the marketing game, which I've been involved with for like almost 20 years now, there's always people trying to give away free shit to get your email address and to basically try to pitch you, try to establish a relationship. So what they do is they get stuff usually that isn't very good, like it's like a PDF doc with a checklist on it or something, and it's like, yeah, get my checklist with your email address. And then you do that, and then it's some shitty checklist that you look at once and then never look at again. And meanwhile, they're now starting to email you. So
if you have, if I may say, if you have a lack of trust in that particular kind of thing, what would revalidate or what would reinform that trust for you? If you ran into some kind of experience like that.
So the actual thing being offered being something that I see value in. So a 6-week course for free, and I need to understand why that's free, because like that feels like a gap to me. So if it's like, this is temporarily free, normally it's $100. We're running it free as a, I don't know, promo as a part of a bigger thing. Yeah, cool. That makes sense to me. That's what I was saying. Sometimes adding a price when it is something of real value, sometimes adding the price is what will make more serious people actually take part.
But it doesn't make sense that we just offer it for free.
No, I mean, you can. It just needs, like, there needs to be a reason why it's free. Like, if you just tell me this is
as
free,
a nonprofit and looking to put good back into the world.
Yeah, there you go. Like, yeah, okay, cool. For a nonprofit, okay. So nonprofit is you guys offering this thing. Great. Yeah. That makes sense. It's like, cool. This is the thing that we do. Like, that's our mission is this. So that's tied to your mission and to your values. You should make sure it's clear. Like, so if I see a nonprofit has this free service that works and gets people jobs, and I need a job, and I want this job and I want this 6-figure thing and whatever, then yeah, that seems like a slam dunk to me. So same as everything else. Show that you understand their situation. Show them how this is going to solve their problems. Make it easy for them to move forward. Remove any doubt, any objections, and then bang, you've got yourself the thing. So yeah, it does. Yeah. Again, this is like a bit different because it's not. This is like now we're talking more marketing than like a sales meeting, but same principles tend to apply.
Thank you.
No problems.
Yeah, it occurs to me there's a corollary here with the corporate world, just corporate services as well, because even though we're talking about selling to potential customers, our internal users for developers, our internal users are customers. Would you agree or disagree that these same tactics apply?
Yeah, they apply with realistically with most things when you're trying to get a point across or you're trying to get get your way almost. In the corporate environment, what happens is you want to stand out to the people above you. Usually, like that's how you get your promotions and stuff. So it isn't just doing your job. It's also seeming like the expert in your job. If you seem like the expert, it's like, great, they're going to listen to you, they're going to respect you more, you're going to get the pay rises. And so understanding what people are looking for, what they're trying to achieve, and understanding the problem that they're facing. Like, you might not go through the same structure, like framework in every conversation with like your boss. But when you keep that stuff in mind, you know how to talk to your boss about what you're doing. You know what questions to ask your boss about what they're trying to achieve. It's consulting. Taking the consultative approach instead of like trying to convince them of something, is trying to understand and go, cool, here's the solution. I have mixed, how do I say this? I've got good and bad with when I used to have a job, because on the good side, I used to get a lot of promotions and stuff. On the bad side, I used to fight with people a lot because they would ask me to do something and I'd ask why. What would happen is sometimes you get people who don't want you to ask why and just want you to do your job, and they get really annoyed with that. Sometimes you get people who will explain why, and then you get to give them a better solution usually. So if you're ever in like a job where you're like, man, I know so much better than my boss, usually try to ask more questions about what they're trying to achieve and why. Because number one is they're going to give you their insight into why, which you might not know, and then it's like, oh, actually that makes sense. And if it makes sense to me, then I'll do it, and I'll do it happily. But when it doesn't make sense, then I'll ask, well, why aren't we doing this instead? And sometimes you get the whole, well, this is just the way it's done. And yeah, that's usually a pretty shitty organization to be in. But sometimes people are like, actually, yeah, that's a really good point. And then you get to improve things in an organization. And when you start improving things, then you're way more valuable. So I used to, in accounting, I used to get promotions, or not promotions, like pay rises. So when everyone else was getting, a $1,000 a year pay rise, I'd get $5,000 always. And so I was getting paid a lot, but because I was very, expert in my role. So yeah, taking that approach and that mindset through to career paths can definitely help. Sometimes you're gonna butt head against management though. So, yeah, be careful.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problems.
The next one, you kind of answered it through the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
But is there any case where you give a higher price to your offer in order to be able to negotiate later, or you just give a fixed price and don't care about negotiations?
No, I don't really negotiate. There have been times I've done this in the past because there are people that I knew were going to be the type they just want to haggle, they want to win. That was earlier in my career. I would entertain that. So I would know that going in by talking to them. And then I would give them the higher price and say, look, I like you, so I'm going to give you a discount. And then they feel good about themselves. But I don't do it anymore because the people who are like that typically aren't great clients, because I don't want to work with people like that. So now I just have my price, and my price is how much I need to charge to care enough to do the work. I don't want to work. Like, let's be honest, I don't want to work. I want to, create fun content, and I want to be social and do things that drive me and give me meaning. I don't want to sit there and build a website for someone. So they need to pay me money for that. And so I'm just going to tell them how much money I need to be willing to do that for them. And some clients, they're going to be terrible and I need way more, or there's not enough money for me to do that. But yeah, the clients who typically need to haggle to win, I don't work with. But you might find that because that also is a cultural thing as well. There are cultures that's part of their process. That's the way it is naturally. And if you try to fight against that with everyone, you're going to be just fighting every single sales call. So if you find culturally that, like I know there are, like, for example, I worked with a lot of Indian people, and I know the Indian people always wanted a deal, the ones that I work with anyway. So, if I was to, tackle the Indian market, I would probably factor that in and make it easier for myself by having a set price, and then, allow them a discount because I like them and make them feel good. But I don't really, I don't do that now. So yeah, you just got to think about your situation and what you're comfortable doing.
Perfect. Yesenia, do you want to ask your question, or should I?
I can. So how many meetings with the client usually are if things are going well as you planned within your framework?
Yep.
I want to know that we're not speaking about when customer come to you and put the money on your table and say, just Nick, work whatever.
No, it doesn't
it goes.
happen. Yeah.
No, I mean, if it goes as you planned, how many meetings it usually
Sure.
be?
So that's the core sales meeting. There's one. I do one sales meeting. I go through that process. I give them a proposal at the end. If I can't get enough information to do a proposal, then like for my core service, then I tell them they need to do a paid thing. So I call it paid discovery. So it's like they don't know enough. They can't answer my questions. Look, I can't give you a solution. I need more info that's beyond the scope of this conversation. We can do a paid discovery session. It's going to be, and I'll pull a price out of somewhere. Minimum will be $500. Sometimes I've done paid discovery for $8,000 for a bigger, really big organization. So somewhere in that range. Usually, small business, $500. That way they pay. Then I get to go and ask more questions. That's my second meeting paid for, and then I give them a proposal at the end. The only other thing that I usually do is, because I get people who I don't know at all, and I don't know if they're going to be a good fit, and I don't want to waste an hour of my time talking to them. So then I do I call it like a vibe check. And so it's like a 10, 15-minute call just to, I say, hi, what made you reach out? What are you looking to achieve? They'll tell me, and I'll judge if it's worth having a proper call with them. And because sometimes there's people I just don't like, or what they're looking for is completely wrong, or they just very clearly don't have budget. It's like cool if you want, if you want to spend $1,000 on a website, that's respect, but that's not me. So then I'll tell them the other way. And that's led to me referring work to other people, which is nice.
Thank you.
Cool. You have another question here?
Yeah, I can read it now. What is client is trying to negotiate price by removing some features, and would you be flexible? But I'm gonna be asking about features that are not first priority. Okay, so they're like, yeah, Nick, it's cool, but I really on a budget. Can we just minimize your work on some point and just make it a bit cheaper?
Yeah, sometimes. So it's a bit tricky, right? So part of my process is I'm going to recommend the solution that they need. So typically it's like, well, this is what you need to do what you said you want. And so when they say that, it's like, oh, look, I'm on a budget or whatever, can remove features. It's like, well, you understand that by removing those features, you're not going to get the outcome you want.
Yeah, so expected outcome would be less.
Yeah, if anything, like sometimes it's like, you need these things to actually make that happen. But it does happen sometimes. So I've had people where it's like, cool, instead of going on the path of, let's say, a full website, start with a landing page. It's less ideal. As long as they're aware that there's going to be less results. Yeah, I'm reasonably flexible with it. But it depends. Like sometimes it's like, no, the solution I have is what you need for it to work. I can't.
All features are important.
Yeah, because I'm not really selling features. It's like I'm selling. In my case, I'm selling a website. In your case, if you're basically selling a feature list that is part of achieving this outcome that they want, then it's a case of grading the features. And it's like, no, let's not look at what price we need it to be. Let's look at what these features are and see which features actually matter, and then we can reprice based on the features that you want brought forward. And because there are some features, there has been. I can't remember what it was now. It was this was like about 1.5 years ago. There was they wanted something that was kind of on the complicated side. And it's like they didn't need it, but they were really pushing for it. And I was like, so I, included it. And then when they came to pricing, they're like, oh, is there anything we can remove? And I said, well, take this out because you don't need it. This isn't gonna. This happens sometimes with like e-commerce as well, when people don't actually need e-commerce, but they want to have e-commerce. And it's like e-commerce adds a lot of money, but we usually discuss that early on. So part of the process is getting a feel for their budget. And also, I mean, at the start, it was like, what is this actually worth? So this all works. How much money are they making? And so if someone's going to make like $1 million and then they're like, oh, actually, can you take this stuff out? I want it to be cheaper. It's like, why? You can make $1 million. Like, this is what the numbers you're saying you can make. Like, isn't it worth, an extra couple of grand to make that happen? But yeah, I do. I am flexible if I can be. If the solution I've outlined is what they need for it to work, I can't really, like, what can I do? Like, I can't take anything out because it's not going to work anymore, and I don't want to do it if it's not going to work. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That was important point for me, that you are selling the whole product, like the full solution for the website.
Yes.
You don't differentiate it by features. So, okay,
No.
Thank you.
No props.
Yeah, so Adewola, you have a question? So do you want to ask yourself or?
Yeah, you can help me read it, please.
Okay. So Adewola is asking, how do you win the heart of non-technical clients that hold a strong influence over decision-making over proposed service? It's easy to relate as an accountant too, but some are not as knowledgeable as you.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is actually probably the easiest part. It's you need to find what people value. So all they need to know that there's a problem that you can solve, and how much it's going to cost them to solve that problem. The more, how do I say this? Okay, so we have there's three things when it comes to pricing for money, right? There is the cost, so that's what it costs you to do. There is how much you charge, your fee, your price. Now you set your price, and the higher the price is over your cost, that's your margin. And the higher your margin, the more incentive you have to sell it to get people on board. So if you go low margin, you don't care. But if you're high margin, you care. But for your client, what they have is they have your price, which is what you set, and they have the value, which is what they see. Like that's what they feel it's worth. Now, whatever they think the value is, they're correct. Doesn't matter what you think it is, because you're not the one paying for it, they are. So if they see value, they want to do it. And so your job in a sales meeting really is just to unpack value, to try to understand them enough to see what the value is of your solution. That's a big part of your job. So when you have someone who's non-technical, I am not going to sit there and try to sell them on technical stuff, because they don't care about technical. So it's like, what do they care about? So someone, like, for example, if I'm, like I do websites and there's a CFO who care, like the CFO who's a chief financial officer in an organization, they care about money. And so what they want to know is, like, how much is this going to cost, and what is the potential upside financially for us as an organization? And ideally, what is the cost of inaction? So what happens if we don't do this? So finding what they care about and essentially making sure it's very clear to them that there is value there for them in terms that they care about, that's how you get it over the line. It isn't about technical anything. So it's just, it's easy to relate as an accountant. So let's say if I'm selling accounting services and I'm an accountant, I'm the expert in accounting. As an expert, I can make concepts understandable for other people. As a salesperson or as a consultant, I am good at identifying what they value and talking about that. So they just need to know that they need to trust that you can do it. That's a big thing, obviously. So they need to know that you're the technical one, that you know all the technical stuff. But they need to know that you're solving a problem they care about, and that there's value in that for them. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Nick. Thanks.
Cool.
Yeah, I have another. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask if anybody else has any questions. So,
Okay. Yeah, you raised a really good point earlier about part of the process is at the end to make it easy as easy on the client as possible to close the deal, to make that a simple process. What do you do, or have you even encountered this, where the customer's process is so heavyweight that that, you could work faster than they can. And what, my background, where this comes from, in an IT department I worked at once, our IT accountant and an corporate attorney, I think they felt like they had to justify their positions by how hard they made everything, to close a deal.
Yep. Yeah, so this is, I call it corporate bureaucracy. It's great fun. And this happens when there's boards involved, and like the larger the organization, the more bureaucracy in the process. All you can do is make it as easy as possible for them to move, but you can't influence their internal processes. So I will ask usually, especially when it seems like a bigger place, like depending on who I'm working with and who I'm talking to, if it's like a small founder-led business, then I know that they're, the decision maker, and I'll ask, like, is there anyone else involved in this? When they have boards, it's like, so what's the process from your side? What happens from your side? And they tell me. And then it's understanding, like, number one is understanding that, if you have any key decision makers, that you're getting them in the room. When it's like a bigger deal as well, like I would try to make sure that anyone down the line is satisfied. And so if I can get into a conversation with them. So I have had times where I've gone and presented my proposal, made it look really sharp as an actual presentation, and presented that based off the stuff we've spoken about in the room. That can help, because you're then able to gauge the people based off their responses. You're able to take questions and answers. So you're now saying the objection handling is you need to handle their concerns then and there, because they will have them while you're there. You can resolve them while you're there. When you're not there, you can't resolve them. That has worked for me before. I tend not to do that much anymore, because I tend to focus on the founder-led businesses today. But yes, it's understanding what they need from you as well. It's like I've offered to go in and present stuff to, who else is involved in this? How do you think they're going to react? What do you think they'll say? Do you think they'll have any problems with it? So you get as much info as you can, because that will tell you how you can handle it. But yeah, ultimately, bigger organizations, they have a lengthy process sometimes. It's taken 9 months to get a deal before. I've had a friend of mine who just had a large organization come back after 24 months with 2 board changes in that time. So, and they wanted to talk again, and they were like, "Oh, can we move forward with this?" It's like, my prices have gone up a lot in 2 years, so no. So you can just do your bit. Figure out how you can make things as easy as possible from your side. Find out if there is anything that you can do from their side to make it, to grease the wheels a little bit, to make it easier. But ultimately, there will be a limit on what you can actually influence. So, you do what you can.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for that. And it sounds like you, in that, if I unpack it, that you also seek out a champion inside the organization.
In large organizations, yes. Because in what I'm doing, because there is the creative aspect, and anytime you do anything creative, people have opinions. I need someone who's going to be my person there, who will collate feedback, who I'll be able to use to then push back, because I push back a lot on stuff. So I need someone who can then push back to the people and explain stuff, explain logic and reason. The worst thing that happens is when you have 5 or 6 different people, or more sometimes, all coming to you with feedback, because they're going to conflict. Because when do you find, in a room of people, when do you find everyone agreeing on everything? Doesn't happen. And so things like politics come into it. People send stuff without including everyone else. You get conflicting information, conflicting requests. You'll do something based on what a couple of people have said, and then someone else will come back and go, wait, no, this isn't what we want, and then change it. So I need one person to kind of collate everything and bring it in, and be my kind of, I'll say man on the ground. It's not always a man. It could be a woman, it could be anything. But yeah, that I definitely push for that in a larger place if necessary.
Cool. Thank you.
No props.
Okay, so anybody else have any questions for Nick?
If not, guys, I am probably the best place to get me is LinkedIn. I'm there. I post a lot. To be fair, just heads up, I post jokes. That's all I pretty much do. Occasionally something useful. But feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you have questions you think about later, ask. I'm pretty open with information and happy to share.
Adam just asked a question. Thanks for doing this, Nick. I want to do something similar, and I would love to know about lead generation when you're starting out. Just a high-level approach would help.
Okay, so lead gen, interesting, very interesting topic, very challenging topic for a lot of people. When you start out, typically tapping your network tends to work. So I had, now I didn't start doing this from school. I had a job, I built up a network. I had a LinkedIn network actually, like 3,000 people or something, like 10 plus years ago. I started in 2012 there. And you start telling people what you do. So that's a great way to start. Just you tell everyone what you're doing. You don't really need a website to start with. You don't need much. You just talk about what you do. You tell people what you're doing, and be cheap to start with because you need the work. If it's not working out and you're not getting people asking you about it, then you can start doing more things, like showing people what you can do. So you do what we call spec work. So you'll see a client as someone that you would love to work with, and you do enough to show them an example of what you could do for them, and you send it to them for free. Or you might just do the whole thing for free. I have a friend who does LinkedIn profile optimization and does banners, the LinkedIn banners. And so she used to do a banner for someone who didn't ask her or pay her, and send it to them and say, hey, I did this for you for free. If you like it, use it. And the person would use it, and then she'll say, I did their banner. So there are ways to go about it when you're first starting out. And it's usually just telling everyone what you do, getting work, using that work that you've done then to show people that you can do it. And then you land more work. And then you need to start actually looking at serious marketing channels like, content creation, networking, like in-person networking. So I do a lot of in-person networking. I wouldn't say a lot, but I do in-person networking, and that leads to work for me because I will connect with people who can send me work. So not like potential clients, like marketing agencies, copywriting studios, places like that a lot, like branding houses, so people who do branding. And so I connect with them. We become friendly. They see that I know what I'm doing. And then when they have a client who needs what I do, they will be like, hey, Nick, can you help? And that's led to a lot of work for me. And I also pick up actual, business owners who want work too. But yeah, to start out, talk about what you do to everyone, because you never know, you could be down at picking up a kid from school and talk to one of the other parents who happens to have a travel agency who needs a new website. And the reason I'm saying this is because this actually happened. So yeah, talk about what you do.
Great. And one last question before we let you go, Nick. Mayowa, I don't know if I butchered your name, but when you identify a potential client who is just launching a business and may not yet see the need for things like online presence or marketing, what is the best way to approach them in a way that genuinely helps rather than feel like a sales pitch?
Okay, so there's two parts to this. First part is, if they're just starting out, do they even need what you're doing? Like, someone starting out doesn't need really a website, not the websites I build anyway. They need some cheap landing page thing they could do themselves. Online marketing, probably don't need much in the way of online marketing, not to the level of where they're paying for a service. So that's part one is, do they actually need it? Part two, how to approach them is by not trying to pitch anything, actually just giving them some advice. So I get people reaching out all the time. They're starting out like, hey, I'm starting out, I need a website. It's like, no, you don't. I'll talk to them about their business. And then it's like, okay, well, what you need to do is go out and get clients. You need to talk to these people. So there was one who they wanted to, it was the guy's wife, and she was something to do with hospitals, and she had the connection already. And I was like, well, you don't need a website. You just need to go and do the work. Like a website isn't going to help you. And even if it is, like, is the website going to help enough where there's a return on their investment? Like if I was charging $500, it's pretty easy to generate a return. But if I'm charging $10,000, then number one, are people going to have the money? Like someone is starting out, will they have the money? And number two, if they spend that money early on when they don't really know anything about their business and who they are yet as a business owner, and who their ideal clients are, and any of that stuff, is that 10,000 going to generate enough money to make it worth spending? Probably not. So like potential clients for me are people who are established and things like that. So you need to find what your market is, and the way to approach them is to genuinely help based off what they need, not what you need. And that is the part that makes it actually genuinely helping. So there are plenty of times where people have wanted to work with me, they've had the money, and I've been like, no, I'm not what you need. And then they really appreciate it, because then what I'm telling them to do is the stuff that will actually make them money. If they spend it with me, they would have just had a nice website. And yeah, so the way to approach them in a way that is genuinely helps is to genuinely try to help them versus help yourself, if that makes sense.
Okay, Ksenia, go ahead. You raised